Hello, everybody. It's Heather with the Leadership at Heart podcast. And today I am super double, triple excited to have Michael Grace on here. I met Michael through a speaking engagement, but before the speaking engagement, I got on the call with he and his team. And that's when he let me know that he had found my book, had really the Art of Caring Leadership book, and that it really had resonated. And he felt like a kind of connection there and had recommended me to be one of the speakers for his conference, and loved his people. And it was an amazing experience. I saw his heart, I saw his intent. And as you know, those are two really important things to me. So welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Heather. It's a pleasure to be here, and really appreciate you inviting me on.
So where are you right now in your leadership journey?
So in my leadership journey, I'm probably on the back end of my career. I've been blessed to have done this. I can't believe it's 30 years, but now the CEO of West Virginia University Hospitals, which is 4 hospitals, part of the larger West Virginia University Health System, which comprises 24 total hospitals. So it's been a journey for sure. I've learned a lot, and I would say I'm at my pinnacle, and at some point we'll look to slow down just a bit because, healthcare is an interesting field for sure, and it's very demanding. And I believe very strongly that, you need to take care of yourself. I believe that's one of your principles, Heather. When you cultivate your self-leadership skills, you have to realize that if you don't take care of you, then you really can't help anybody else. So I'm at that point in my journey. I've been blessed, and just enjoy what I'm doing right now, and hope to do it for a bit longer. But I'm closer to the end than the beginning at this point, Heather.
We can't imagine a WVU workplace without you somewhere around it. So maybe you'll still have your hand in it, even whenever that happens, right? When you exit it, there'll be still a presence there because you've done such great work.
Well, you're kind to say that. I've been blessed to be here. It's a wonderful organization, has really an excellent overall leader. My board of directors is so supportive. And I joke with my wife, but I'm somewhat serious. My version of retirement is probably going to be an escort, a patient escort, or a concierge, or somebody who drives the vehicle around the parking lot picking up patients, to get them to their appointment, because I love what I do. I just think, at some point, in this field, if you're awake, you're basically working. Hospitals don't close. So, you do that and it becomes part of who you are. I use the word work-life integration because I don't believe you can achieve work-life balance because balance assumes something is equal. But if you're comfortable with your work-life integration and you love what you do, it's sustainable. But also there are things in your life like your family, your hobbies, things that are important that aren't work-related that, as you get to a certain point, if you're able to walk away from it, that's certainly something that I will entertain, God willing.
So there's 2 things I want to say. One is healthcare and healthcare workers. It's one of the largest industries that I serve. I have a huge heart and connection for healthcare because I know how much you have to pour into other people. So, I will never lose that heart for healthcare workers and just the institutions and how they serve other people. But one thing I have a question is, what is that one hobby that you'd want to go do like tomorrow if you could do it a lot?
It's a great question. I love the outdoors. I love to fish. I would probably be comfortable, on a beach, fishing, from a pier, on a boat in the middle of a lake, just, relaxing, getting fresh air, and just viewing nature, and I'm an only child.
I am too.
I remember your story. So our stories are very similar. It's the way that we were raised. But I don't shy away from liking to be alone. And my wife knows this. I will just go by myself. with a fishing pole and just sit along the banks of a river or a lake and just, reflect, just think and just decompress. So I would say that's what I will be doing a lot of, God willing, when I'm not doing this.
When you finally do that, send me a picture someday, right? Somehow I get a picture of you. If someone takes a picture of you standing on that pier or in the middle on the boat in the middle of the lake, I'd love that. I love that view, and that brings me some peace too. I love that. Water does something for me. So whenever I'm around any kind of water, it's just I think most of us have some of that sense of peace there.
Agreed.
So you do a lot. I mean, your culture is very important to you, and the culture is for the hospitals that you are leading right now. What do you see that it has been, and then maybe continue in 2024 and beyond, the kind of the number one secret ingredient to make sure that your culture is one that continues to focus on the things you want it to focus on?
And I preach this to my leadership team. It's having, people in place at every level of the organization who engage and listen to their employees. That may sound easy, but it's very difficult. I alone can't make sure we have a culture that's supportive of our people. I need leadership at every level of the organization who understands it's a priority, and that, we will always explain the why. I tell people the importance of that. For example, I developed a feature on our internal internet. We call it Connect, where there's a little button that says ask WVU Hospital's leadership, a question or provide a suggestion. Any employee can go out, a physician, a nurse, a housekeeper, anybody can go out, press that button, and type in a question, concern, comment. It doesn't say where that's going. That goes straight to my inbox. And I currently I have about 11,500 employees, but, I'm not perfect. I may miss one here and there, and I regret if that happens, but I personally respond to every one of those. I don't think I've missed one yet, but like I said, I may have. And I tell my team, probably 60 to 70% of what I'm responding to is a reason why we can't do something. But you're at least explaining the why. And 90% of the time, when you do that, people respect it. They may not like it, but they respect it. And I'm trying to train every leader under my leadership in my organization to do just that, just to be responsive to their people. 2 ears, 1 mouth, right? Listen twice as much as you speak. Engage with them, give them a why, and create a culture where people feel respected, they feel listened to, and appreciated. I think that's the key.
Well, you're speaking my language. That would be why we have this connection between us, because, that's my entire focus. I always say everything I create, I don't get any piece of content, anything that goes out is always going to be circled around what you just talked about. Mm-hmm. And because people, what you said is the reason why they're not mad at the outcome is because they feel heard in the process.
Right. You never quit learning. You never quit learning. And just like 3 months ago, I was, we developed something, Heather, called an employee experience board, and it's employee led. And basically, W Hospitals is three main. Our behavioral medicine hospital is rolled into JW Ruby, which is our academic flagship. So 3 hospitals, then 3 employee experience boards. And I went to the kickoff of these boards, and I was, fielding questions from the audience. And one individual stood up and he said, "Dr. Grace," he said, "I just want you to know, sometimes in this organization, I think people are listening to me, but I don't feel heard." And I paused for a second, Heather, of what that actually meant. And I realized what it meant. It means that, someone standing in front of him, looking attentive, receiving the information, receiving his comments. So someone was listening to him, but he didn't feel heard because one, either nothing was done about his concern, or two, somebody didn't close the loop. So, and I will always remember that comment as an example of how I can improve. I've only been in this position. It'll be 2 years next January. I grew up at another organization a little north of here. Was really blessed to be part of that organization as well. But yeah, that's exactly right. And it's so easy for people like me to ignore something and hope it goes away, or ignore it because I feel it's not important in a larger scheme of things. That's the easy way. Real life example, I got a concern 2 weeks ago about how the chicken parmesan moved from an entree to the pasta bar. An employee was really concerned about that. And that employee's concern was my concern. And, I addressed that. So it's a long answer to, there's a difference, from being listened to and being heard.
I appreciate that so much. And what you just said in all interaction is exactly that body of work on my own listening is exactly why I did it. And it is. People want to be seen and they want to be heard, and they want to be heard they want to really be heard, and not just that whole fake listening or part listening thing that we talk about, which is why I brought up the thing with you before we started the call. This is exactly why I brought that up specifically to you, because I know that's a focus of yours. And I know it's one of those things that you really want to bring forward in the culture. So I appreciate that about you. So I am curious, out of all those, like with the hospitals and all the things that people look to, and they look to you as a leader, how do you think they would describe you as a leader, like your leadership style? How would they do that?
I can only hope that they would define me as an approachable, humble leader, a serving type leader. My doctoral degree is in part in leadership, and the various leadership styles. I've always wanted to be an authentic / servant type leader who people view as honest, people view as transparent, and humble, and hopefully, like I said, approachable. And the approachable piece is something that is often difficult to achieve, in these positions. I think, certain people just shy away from authority. Certain people, don't understand that I view myself as working for them as much as the opposite's true. And it's difficult to show that. It's difficult to prove that. You can say that, but the actions are what's necessary for people to truly know that you're sincere in what you're saying. So I hope people would say that, that I'm approachable, that I'm humble, and that I'm just one of them. I exist to do what I have to support them. And one of my favorite things, Heather, to do, and people look at me sometimes like I'm an alien, but if I'll go to an employee orientation, and I'm pretty good in PowerPoint, so I'll take our organizational chart and I'll do the 90-degree flip, right? And it puts me in that top box at the bottom. And I say to people, look, I'm like, the boxes on the bottom in a historical organization chart, those are the most important people in this hospital because you're closest to the patient. This top box that's now on the bottom, that's me. I'm the least important person, but I do exist for a reason. I exist to support you. I exist to provide resources, to remove barriers, and to allow you to do your good work. And always let me know how I can help you do that. And every time I do that, I scan the room because I love the nonverbal communication, and some people are snickering, like, is this guy for real? Some people are amazed that I'm saying that, and some people, are just in genuine disbelief. But that's how I've gotten to this point in my career, and that's how I try to act each and every day.
Was there another leader? Because I heard you say something like, I've always wanted to be transparent. I've always wanted to be this. And was there another leader that you were wanting to emulate, like this one that just super impressed you growing up or at some point in your life where you're like, I just, that's what I want to be. I want to be that person.
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I'll give you a couple um, people who I've never met, but one who's had a profound impact on me personally and professionally. So I've always loved the Theodore Roosevelt quote, that basically is no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. That's always resonated with me, and I would have loved to have seen Theodore Roosevelt in action as a leader. I'm also a big Simon Sinek fan. I just, his content resonates with me. And I remember, one episode or quote in particular where he said leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. If you think about that, it's pretty deep. And I've always admired his approach and his style of leadership. But probably the biggest mentor I've had in my career, and who I owe a tremendous amount to, is an individual by the name of Dr. June Sup Lee. Dr. Lee is currently the CEO of Emory Health System in Atlanta. And I learned so much from him. He was the clinical chief for a heart and vascular institute, and I was his administrator for many years, and just learned how you can be both, intelligent, respectful, kind, but also ambitious, and driven, and being able to achieve great things without the use of power, by using persuasion, by using relationships, by using, just being a kind person. And he took that all the way to his latest position, which, like I said, is a large academic medical center in Atlanta, and he's now the CEO. So, Dr. Lee, know that I love you and respect you.
Awesome. Maybe we can have him on next. We can refer him over to me. We can talk to him.
He would be a wonderful get. Yeah, he's a wonderful man.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, so we've reached that time at the point of the podcast where I just want to have you share a story about a time when maybe you weren't the caring leader of today. You weren't maybe demonstrating the leadership of the heart principles. And it doesn't have to be a long time view, but maybe there was an interaction, a story that you can remember and recall for the listeners. And tell us what was happening, what did it look like, and then what did you do to kind of come out of it? And what I mean by that is, I think I don't believe in perfection. So I mean, how did you become more kind of uplift yourself out of that to take yourself to the next level? What happened in that scenario?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I will say, as I think about it, I'll have to go back to a time I was CEO of a former hospital, the organization I was at for 20 years. And appropriately, from a financial standpoint, the organization had to, make some cutbacks. And the caring person in me wants nothing to do with service consolidations, closures, and definitely impacting people's lives in a negative way. The administrator side of me knows that that's necessary to meet your budget, to meet the organizational goals and objectives, and honestly, to adhere to a directive that you've been given, to execute. And being a CEO, sometimes, in a larger system, it's a very lonely place because you may not always agree with decisions, but you have to execute. So the one part of, I would say, in my career where I felt I was not a caring leader was when we were effectuating a service closure at that hospital. And, I was just going through the plan, making sure I hit the date that was given to me. I was dotting I's and crossing T's. And I always had the people in mind. I always had my employees in mind. We were going to take care of them. We're going to make sure they get jobs somewhere else. If possible, we're going to give them severance if necessary, but we have to execute. So Heather, one of the things I pride myself in is being visible. So I'm not the type of person who announces something like that and then disappears. For good or bad, I'm the type of person who announces something like that and then will walk that department on a frequent basis thereafter until the actual closure takes place. So I remember walking up to a nurse's station of the service that was closing. A nurse looked up at me and immediately just started crying, just uncontrollably. And I wasn't a doctor yet. She says, "Mr. Grace," she says, "please don't do this. Please don't do this. This department is all I know. I know that you mentioned that you will take care of us and help us land somewhere else, but I don't want to go somewhere else. I only want to be here." And Heather, I froze. I didn't know what to say. And the defining point in my career was that moment, because I thought to myself, am I cut out for this job? Because I'm doing everything right as I was told to do it. I thought that I was being a caring leader by making sure these good people will land somewhere else. But there's more to it than that. I mean, there's connections to the specific department. There's camaraderie amongst the existing staff. There's so much more to it than just making sure, they're landing somewhere else. That's not caring. A caring leader would have fought back and tried to defend, the closure. I did not do that. I thought it best to just go through as directed and to execute, which has got me where I'm in my career. You have to execute in order to get to these levels of positions. But I look back at that and think I was not a caring leader. How that has shaped me, you asked the next part of the question moving forward, was that I learned the purpose of value alignment between yourself, and the organization, for which you work. And I'm not saying that, the organization didn't have good values, but if part of the process was going to be, that we needed to continue to just do these things, in order appropriately to survive, I wasn't cut out for that. So it was not even so much values, but initiative alignment. In other words, is this the type of work I want to be doing? And the answer was no. And so I voluntarily resigned from my position at the time that it was dissertation time for my doctoral degree. The organization was so very kind to me. They kept my job open. As the CEO of a hospital, they said, "Mike, we want you to come back." But I knew when I was stepping down that I needed the mental health break because of the reason that I mentioned, that, I don't know that I'm cut out for this type of work, but, I was grateful that I thought a break, being away would really help. And I knew I had a job to come back to, and I can never thank my former leaders enough for that. But as luck would have it, Heather, my dissertation research occurred at a peak during COVID. My doctoral thesis was on physician burnout and leadership, and how people like me can be better leaders to prevent physician burnout. Due to the COVID spike, I was not able to complete my research in the amount of time the organization had allotted me to come back. and we had to part ways. And it was very, very difficult because I love my former job and the people. But, you know, I'm very fortunate to have landed here afterwards. And I know that's a very long story, but it's a true story. And it's really helped me, uh, you know, identify who I am as a leader.
Mm. Wow. Ooh. Yeah, that was good. That was a lot. And thinking through that the choice that you had to make, the tough choices you had to make, this staring at yourself in the mirror and recognizing it wasn't the person, you weren't the person you wanted to be, you weren't the future of who you were supposed to be. Embarking on the research, it makes you now even more crystal clear when you're seeing this, probably the burnout take place all around you in staff from all levels of the hospital. I think you landed exactly where you were supposed to be. I mean, I see impact, and I think there's even more impact to be made. And so, wow, kudos to you for sharing that. And there's a lot, like I could just process just that for a long while.
Yeah, there's a lot there, but that's true. I mean, I was not a very caring person in that example, at least as I reflect on it now.
Some of this is interesting because whether you're in your role, a mid-level manager, director level, frontline supervisor, whatever, I think about sometimes there are these times where, often there are these times where someone above us says, go do this thing. And our gut's like, that doesn't feel very good. And it could be something related to a reorg, a downsize, something that's related to a change that's going to impact people, for example, that we know what they love, we know what they dislike, and we are telling them to do a thing that they absolutely hate, and we have to do it because someone told us, and it's the way the organization has to move forward. And so this happens, I think, at all levels. You don't just have to be at the CEO level for that to happen. And we all have choices to make. And we also have a choice on how we see the thing we're doing. So sometimes I've been in that position before, mostly at like a director level type of position, and going like, okay, I have to do, they want me to do this thing, and I have to smile and grin and act like this thing is like something I want. And at the same time, there's the other side of me that absolutely hates this thing. And you do wonder, like, is this worth it, having to continue to make these decisions that go against what I say I value, what I say I represent, and then the thing I need to do for the organization. I don't know how, even now, because I know you have to do these things too. And I know you have to tell people to do things they don't like. How do you reconcile that kind of, this thing isn't me, doesn't represent me, this thing doesn't help me be my best, highest self and or other people, but it has to get done. How do you reconcile that?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And how I reconcile it is I go back to, Peter Drucker and the difference between management and leadership, where basically, management's doing things right as you're directed to do them. And leadership is doing the right things. And sometimes those things are the same and sometimes they're different. I always try to focus on the leadership side of the equation. And I always try, to, when you're dealt lemons, you make lemonade. And, I think reconciliation occurs through understanding there's probably a lot of different ways to achieve an objective, other than maybe one that was directed in a way that you're not comfortable with. And that's why I always try to search for, the win-win, and always try to make sure people understand my side of things and in my perspective. And, everybody has a boss, everybody has, disagreements in organizations. They're like families. And I don't win every argument, but at the end of the day, I feel like as long as I've had a chance to say my part, to give my perspective, and if it's not agreed with, I respect that. And I will execute and be a good partner and implement, as I've been asked to, but at least I can put my head on my pillow at night, Heather, and know that I did everything possible to explain my side of things and to try to find a solution that was more consistent with who I am as a leader, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it does. Yeah. Thank you for that. So, okay, here's a question. Do you have any questions for me? You kind of get to turn the tables. Is there anything that you'd like to ask me? You're just dying to ask me and want Heather to answer, and I'll answer for you and the listeners.
Yeah, I would like to ask you a question. So, I believe that a big part of what people like you and I should be doing is teaching and influencing, I'll use that word, our future leaders. And I'm often put in positions, by early careerists, aspiring CEOs, people who are just out of school and looking at me and saying, I want your job. In all of your travels, Heather, and all of your research and the good work that you've done, in your writings, if you were to give advice to somebody on an early careerist looking to achieve great things, what advice would you give them with the work that you've done and the research that you've completed? Mm-hmm. What would you tell that person if they said, Heather, what advice do you have to me as I start my professional journey?
I'd say that relationships matter and every conversation counts.
Okay.
And I say that because I can think back to one of the interviews I had with Dr. Kevin Patterson, and it's a healthcare organization here in Colorado, Connect for Health Colorado. He's the CEO of that. And I remember when he talked about the fact that he would kind of like you walk around his organization. It was smaller than yours, of course, but he'd go and he'd talk to the person who was taking out the trash, and he might ask them a question. They might have an opinion. He would talk to the person who was answering, people coming through the door and or the phones. He would talk to everybody, and he always felt like they had something to contribute to the success of the organization, to initiatives. They could provide more clarity to his journey, to decisions he needs to make. And it didn't just have to come from his leadership team, from his board, from outside world. And so I think that the building relationships at all levels and that every conversation counts is because the gifts that we give through our conversations by listening and interacting, and then at the same time, what we receive by the interactions is so enlightening. They say what you read walks and talks with you tomorrow, which I do agree. But I think that every conversation that we have also walks and talks with us tomorrow. And it really makes a huge impact on our success and our journey.
Yeah, that's great advice. Now, I often refer, I think we have so much in common. I call them the 3 R's, and I will give the same advice. I say, as you begin your journey, always remember these 3 R's. Responsiveness, be responsive to people. Someone sends you an email, answer it. Someone texts you, text them back. Someone calls you, try to return their call the same day. If you're responsive, that leads to respect. People feel like you respect them because you responded to them and you did it in a timely manner. And if you can do those 2 things, you'll build relationships which are critical at all levels of your organization and your career. So I couldn't agree with you more.
I told you that we already know there's a connection here. There's just no denying that. There's a lot of overlap. I always say, I found my people. Like, this is my person, and that's my person. I know when there's that connection and there's the alignment there. And always say to people in this Leadership at Heart podcast or any of the work I do, are we perfect? Absolutely not. We're all on a journey just like everybody else. But we just happen to have North Stars that are more others focused, that look inward a lot, that self-evaluate when we've not done well in the area. We might be more critical on ourselves, but those are the people that we are. It is who we are. And I think some people respect it. Some people may even doubt it. It's real. Is this real? Because I'm not sure I can trust this genuine feeling, this real feeling, this being seen feeling. I'm not sure it's real. And it's because it's such a unique person to be, because not many of us feel heard, seen, valued, understood, important, respected. So if we choose to be and lead in this way, we automatically set ourselves up as unique, but also by some people who are reluctant and maybe not trusted because they're like, I don't know if that's right. Is that true? Is this true? Is this real? Can I trust this?
It's funny you say that, and I feel the same way. The definition of integrity is doing the right things when nobody's looking. And just earlier today, these are the things that make me smile and to make me feel like, maybe things are going okay and we're making an impact. So I was walking down the hall and I picked up a candy wrapper that was on the floor. I didn't think anybody was around. And I took 4 or 5 steps and I heard from behind me a young lady says, Dr. Grace, she said, I just want to thank you for everything you're doing here. And I said, you don't have to thank me. I appreciate all you do. And she said, and look at that. She said, someone would ask me who would pick up a piece of paper off the floor as he's walking by. Dr. Grace would. I'm like, of course I would. No, yeah, I mean, there's the type of little things that keep me going on a daily basis. Just thinking that people acknowledge that I'm just a member of the team and I exist to serve them as much as the opposite's true. So
That's awesome. Well, for those who you've given us so much already, is there anything that you haven't said when we think of like pearls of wisdom that you want to deliver to those who are listening today? Something that might get them through their week, something that really would inspire them to lead in the way we described. Is there kind of one thing you'd like to give as a pearl of wisdom?
I would say, don't be afraid to lead with compassion and empathy. It's not a weakness. I've at various stages of my career have been criticized for being too nice. And I refute that because I'd like to think that, while you have compassion and that you're actually nice to people, that you can still have high standards and that you, can still be respected even though you're perceived as compassionate and nice. So that's a piece of advice I would give. Don't mistake compassion for weakness, because compassion is not a weakness. It's actually a superpower if you can combine it with being aggressive, being driven, and having purpose and wanting to do great things. I'll leave it, with a quote from Jim Rohn, who basically said the challenge of leadership is to be strong but not rude. Be kind but not weak, to be humble but not timid. And that's often challenging to do, to achieve those things. But I would just say, don't be afraid to be compassionate and nice. You don't have to view that as a weakness. I think that's very important because I've done this long enough to know that sometimes people view compassion and empathy in leaders as a weakness, and that really does not have to be the case.
So glad I got you on here. I'm glad I invited you and that we met and that you all the things that, it started with you. And so I appreciate that. I thank you for that. And for those who are listening, I am sure you got like a whole woof of some good leadership here and some things to be thinking about and figuring out how, we can show up each and every day as leaders of the heart and showing more of that empathy and compassion. So I appreciate you, Michael, for sure.
I appreciate you, Heather. And it's an honor to have finally met you. And thank you for coming to our leadership retreat. It was very, very well received. And you're helping me lead my team here through your good work. So I really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. And thanks everybody for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast. Be well.